Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, God, for bringing us here safely tonight. Please give us the guidance and the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. And this we pray. Amen. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
Present.
Mayor Marquez.
Present. Item number 5, these are communications from the staff. Anything tonight? No. Item number 6, these are items from the public. These are non-agenda items. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items tonight? Seeing none, we will move forward to the items from the public agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the mayor or council grants a longer period of time. Item number 7, these are public hearings. Tonight we have no public hearings. Item 8. Item 8A is approval of the warrants. 8B is approval of minutes of the April 25th, 2000 regular meeting. 8C is authorize city manager to execute agreement with Westside Stingrays for use of city pool. Are there any questions on any of the consent items? Seeing none, can we have some direction on that?
I so move for approval of consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Item 9A, this is to consider establishment of a poet laureate program. Cleve?
This is our 3rd meeting discussing this item. And just briefly, I've given the council 3 options here that I think could be considered. Basically, my recommendation would be to closely consider option 2 or 3. Perhaps we want to do something, recognize Mr. Santana through our proclamation process, which we have done for other community members who have been recognized for specific achievements that they have received. The 3rd option would be to decide that this is not something, as far as a poet laureate, that we want to proceed with at this time. Other than that, I don't have a lot of additional information to add. Mr. Santana is not present tonight, so I don't know if there's anybody else who wants to speak on this item.
Okay. Anything else? Are there any comments on this? I know this is the 3rd time that we've discussed this, so I believe that we should probably draw this to a close on whichever way we're going to go on this, rather than continue to hash this thing out. Are there any comments? Any feelings on?
It's up to the mayor to issue a proclamation, right? And the whole council doesn't have to.
They can. They don't
Yeah,
have
but-
to, but they
yeah.
can. Yeah.
I agree. I'd say option 3. The option to it's not something we really want to do at this time, but 2 is also acceptable.
I would concur with that. Not having enough information to really go any farther in this, and certainly I don't know if we have the people available to carry this through. So I would agree with Dave and opt for option 3.
Okay. All right, being that we have a majority here who wants to opt for option 3, we will do we need an actual motion on this to this is something we okay.
Yeah, I think I'd probably I don't know. It's
Just
up
for,
to-
yeah, technically you wouldn't because
You're not
wouldn't be
doing anything,
new.
yeah.
But if you
Right.
want to clear
Okay.
the record, then
At this point, if this is something we want to close discussion on and move forward, then it sounds to me like can we have an actual motion and a second for option number 3?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we take consideration of the Poet Laureate program and just simply state that it's not something the council wants to do at this time.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Item 9B, this is adopt resolution number 2000, next to number, a resolution adopting rules governing the administration of agricultural preserves pursuant to Government Code Section 51231. Bob?
Mr. Mayor, I think I'm on. Members of the council, I will, you have a fairly complete staff report going over this. Essentially, the issue is that we've annexed property that's under Williamson Act. We were able to terminate the contracts on 2 of the parcels. One of the parcels was not protested, and we have inherited that Williamson Act contract. Now we need to adopt rules of procedure in terms of how we administer it, and this resolution essentially does that. This resolution by law is required to establish processes for getting into and out of the Williamson Act, and the fees and how the process it is heard. And of course, the issue that we're looking at here is termination of the contract. So we're adopting rules and procedures. In addition to that, is an interim measure. I have established policies with respect to land use conformity with the Williamson Act, the state purpose of the Land Conservation Act contract. Since the property was put into Williamson Act under Stanislaus County A2 zoning, I've used that as a guide for review of projects. Of particular interest in this case, we have a community park, and we also have a stormwater detention facility, both public facilities. A portion of the property in question has also been pre-planned for medium density residential development. That, of course, isn't consistent with Williamson Act policies and zoning standards, so if we're not able to terminate the contract, the notice of non-renewal has already been filed on it, so in 10 years, that property, or probably 8 or 9 years now, that property will fall out of the Williamson Act and they can proceed with that development. In the interim, though, we would be able, following certain procedures, permit the development of the site for recreational purposes and of course public facilities like the stormwater detention facility. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Are there any questions for Bob?
I have a question.
Okay.
In other words, whatever housing that the developer has lined up for that space would have to be postponed until after the Williamson Act was terminated or had expired?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But we can still go ahead with the park and the,
That's my understanding of the law.
okay.
And the developers are aware of that. They were aware of that 2 years ago when we entered into this process. So this isn't coming as a surprise to anybody. They did think that they could have terminated it much easier than the process that we're detailing out here. But
That was all I had. Thank
no
you.
surprises.
And this, is this the action that when we were at LAFCO last, is this what we had discussed?
No,
'Cause I know we
the
had-
last,
The
I think
third
the last
time, right?
action that we were at with LAFCO was, we shifted some of the language in terms of Williamson Act because if you remember, we had a boundary adjustment that involved another piece of property and that had another Williamson Act contract on it. So we were going to effect a lot line adjustment to bring the property in conformance with the Sherman Parkway's configuration. When it was found out that that wasn't doable by the developer, they came back and asked about redesign of the project. We reviewed it and it was consistent with our approvals, so they could redesign the project without involving that piece of property. Therefore, they terminated their process with that contract, and so for LAFCO and annexation purposes, we modified the annexation of that Williamson Act contract. So,
Right.
And this implements one of their conditions.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, then if we could have some direction on 9B.
I so move for adoption of resolution number 2000, next number, a resolution of adopting rules governing the administration of agricultural preserves pursuant to Government Code Section 51231.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thank you, Bob. Item 9C, introduce ordinance number 2000, next to number, an ordinance amending various sections of the Newman Municipal Zoning Code with respect to signs, outdoor sales, and garden structures. Bob?
This is a complicated ordinance, but it's something we've gone through probably a dozen times before the council and the planning commission in the past year. We had several public meetings last summer discussing some of the issues with the sign code. The basic general direction here was, one, we wanted to streamline the permit process for outdoor sales, use of our sidewalks for sales for the downtown merchants. And we had it set up so that it was a monthly permit, and they wanted to tie that permit process into the business license and make it an annual permit. So we've essentially incorporated that into this. We have an issue with garden structures, and it seems as though our code is written in such a fashion so that anytime somebody puts up a fountain in their front yard or a gazebo or something like that in their backyard, even if it doesn't have a roof or isn't a structure by other definitions, a trellis for roses, for instance, falls under our building codes, and it created kind of a lot of confusion. And particularly after the last issue with garden sheds and that sort of thing, which are structures, it was felt that we needed to clarify that provision of code. So we, the building department and the city staff got together to come up with some language that made it clear that these are not structures from the standpoint of our building codes. And the last issue is with, of course, the signs. And there are several cleanup provisions. The issue was with the merchants, and I think the council and the commission, was that one size does not fit all in terms of our sign codes. And our sign codes were very strict. They were applied in the downtown area, but unfortunately they were citywide in their application. And so the industrial areas and other areas that are not in the downtown area, it was felt we needed a different standard. So what we've done is develop some new standards for advertising devices outside of the downtown area. In addition to that, we've also set up some different standards for signs inside the industrial area. The industrial plan, the issue specifically is with pole signs, and so we've made some language changes in the code which allow certain kinds of pole sign structures inside the industrial park where they're not allowed into any other place in the city. The issue there was that our industrial specific plan specifically set standards for pole signs, and of course our other specific plans, particularly Highway 33 and the downtown plan, specifically prohibited them. So of course our sign code was written up from the downtown perspective, and people in the industrial area felt that they needed a different standard. So that's essentially what our code does. What I've given you is an annotated copy of our code, which in italics identifies all of the changes, because when you go through and you read an ordinance out of context, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So you have an attachment here that has a code in terms of how it reads in its entirety as amended, and then you have a copy of an ordinance which affects those amendments. This amendment has been reviewed by our city attorney, and staff has gone through it. I think we've got all the typos and wowies out of it, and it does what we've discussed in this before this council. Again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to address them.
Are there any questions for Bob?
On the pole signs, you will allow a pole sign up to 20 feet if they have 100 feet of frontage, right?
That's the standard that was set up. I believe that the planning commission adjusted that to 200 feet. Our original proposal was 100 feet of frontage, and the planning commission adjusted that to 200 feet.
And how many places along Route 33 does that entail? Do you know?
That's the industrial area.
Okay.
That was a tricky one before the commission. One of the agendas driving this whole process was that a business in the industrial area wanted to have a pole sign along Highway 33, and our Highway 33 plan specifically prohibits it. So the approach that was taken, and you know, if somebody puts a pole sign, the argument could be, can it be seen from Highway 33? So the issue was that there's language put in here so that it primarily, it's his focus is on the roadway in which it's located, and it may be visible, you know, in some manner from Highway 33, but it's a secondary kind of a view corridor. And I think that's consistent with the intent of the Highway 33 corridor plan.
Are there any other questions for Bob? No? There's no more questions. Thank you very much for this thorough staff report. And if that's it for the questions, can we have some direction on this, please? Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed amendment to city sign, garden structure, and outdoor sales provisions of the city zoning code.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thank you, Bob.
I'd just like to make one more comment. I'd like to thank the council for the planning commission that you've given me to work with. This has been a dynamite group. They worked through a couple of 3 thorny issues, and it's been it's one of the better planning commissions I've ever had the opportunity to work with. So you guys did a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could you review just the changes in the garden structure?
Can you do that, Bob? Review the changes relating to garden structures, please.
Certainly. Essentially what we did is that in the accessory building section of the code, maybe I should work from my italic section. In the accessory building definition, we added arbors, patio covers, lath houses, pergolas, and similar structures as not being accessory buildings. And these are essentially buildings without roofs. They have no walls, no roofs. And then we defined a garden structure as an arbor, or a garden structure is defined in code as an arbor, deck, fountain, lath house, pergola, raised planting bed, trellis, or other similar structure intended specifically to enhance the appearance of a garden for which is a function related to the use of the outdoor space, but not limited to a house, garage, carport. So it makes it, it's a garden thing. And we defined arbor as a new definition because it wasn't specifically spelled out in this. And this is where we got into this whole issue of these trellises that people are growing plants on, making shade. And an arbor, patio covers, lath houses, pergola, trellis, or other similar structure without walls or a solid roof intended specifically to enhance the appearance of the garden for which a function or which has a function relating to the use of the outdoor space, but not including a house, garage, carport, storage building, provided that it is not located within the front yard setback or side yard setback of the main building. And these definitions basically address all of the hot button issues that were brought to us by the building department, and it doesn't affect the issue of garden structures or those kind of things, storage buildings or those kinds of issues, but it's addressing garden trellises.
Okay.
So it still has to be in the backyard.
In the front,
Basically.
outside the front setback area. 20 feet is the front setback area, but there's a lot of other front yard areas that these structures can be located in.
For your information, Bob, this does not address yet the issue of the storage shed issue. That one will still be taken under and some changes made. So,
Thanks again, Bob.
Okay.
Item 9D, this is to recommend that the City Council direct staff to negotiate with the recommended consultant to prepare the city master storm drain update. Cleve?
I'm going to let Richard handle this
okay.
and review what we've done here and the proposals, and then if I need to, I'll speak to the issue also.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council,
What you have before you is a staff report recommending that the city manager negotiate with the firm of Thompson Heisel Engineers. As you can see, we initially went out a couple of months ago with this RFP and got only one response at that time, and we felt that with the only one response and the cost of the fees that were proposed on that proposal, that we needed to go out and try to get a few more for comparison sakes, and to see really where we stood in terms of cost and the proposed scope of work. So we did go back out on April 3rd. We mailed more requests out for proposals, and we were lucky enough to get 5 back this time. And the results of the 5 proposals are before you, and the way we went through and analyzed and tabulated the results are in the attached chart. And as you can see in the total scores, there were basically 3 firms that, or 3 numbers that basically tied in terms of total score, or the lowest score in this case, which is actually the highest ranking. And those included Thompson Heisel, Odell Engineering, and Precision Engineering, which, as your city engineer, we put these numbers out to try to get some feel for what we were going to try to get back in terms of where costs should be, timeframes, and all the issues that we put on the schedule here. Taking into account that Thompson Heisel and Odell Engineering were identical in score, we looked a little deeper in those 2 proposals and found that the all-important issue of field time, Thompson Heisel was by far the shortest time frame that was proposed in all the proposals. Along with their experience quotient, they were substantially more experienced in this field than some of the other engineering firms. Taking those 2 items into account, that was the primary reason why we were recommending them over Odell. Was the time frame, the amount of field work was substantially less, but we felt that the time frame was the essential item that we were looking at. And primarily because 10 months ago, the city basically approved 4 subdivisions that had over close to 700 lots being proposed. And as you can anticipate, drainage is going to be a major issue and an item of conversation in all these proposals that are now just starting to come before us. And this document, City Master Storm Drain Plan, is a document that we use as an important tool in negotiating with these developers and making sure that what they're proposing meets the city's needs both now and in the future. And in order to talk to them and negotiate with them on some of these issues, we need to make sure that this document is up to date and current. So if you have any more questions, I'll be glad to go over those or answer those.
Are there any questions for Richard on this? Only question I have is that seemed, as you had said, the importance of the time with Thompson Heisel looking at a schedule of 4 months. Costs were pretty much a wash, but the main thing was, I guess, the time frame.
The time frame and the experience too. They were quite a bit more experienced in some of these.
Okay. So I suspect we'll hear something back sometime in September, around September.
Have it completed, sure.
Okay, right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Can we have some direction on that item then?
I recommend that, make a motion that we recommend to the city council direct staff to negotiate with the recommended consultant to prepare the city master storm drain update.
Second.
Before you vote, can I ask one question? Do you want us to bring this agreement back to the council for approval, or is this authorization for me to go ahead and sign and proceed with the contract?
I think we can just move forward on it. Go
If
ahead.
it doesn't exceed basically what.
The
what's
cost that's in
Yeah,
here?
right.
Okay.
I would think.
And the cost is $75,864.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. We had a motion, and did we have a second?
Second. yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Thank you, Richard. Item number 9E, this is an informational report regarding the cost of recruitment and retention of police officers. Mike?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Basically, this is a report that was a request from you a while back. We finally got it completed, and I hope you had a chance to kind of digest this, and I'll kind of go through it as we, through the report here, and answer any kind of questions at the end. Basically, we're looking at how the cost of the recruitment and retention, and to begin with that, we're looking at what the cost of recruitment is. Part of that is advertising, mailing, review and screening, a physical agility test, an oral board, background investigation, fingerprinting, medical exam, psychological. Also, we have to put uniforms on this individual, a safety vest. There's a field training that has to go on. That's about 3 months of what we're looking at here is what it's costing us for the FTO itself, our trained officer. A training officer's cost for those 3 months, any overtimes, range qualification, and we are required to train this individual with at least 2 classes per year. So that really breaks down by the time we're looking at it about $27,215 just to get these individuals trained and get them seasoned. Currently, we are continuing to lose experienced officers to other agencies that pay higher. And the cost of losing an experienced officer really can't be measured as far as his effectiveness out in the field. And but this is not the only thing that we're not the only department that's experiencing this. This is all departments throughout the state are pretty much having a hiring problem, and we are facing the same hiring concerns as other agencies, especially our agencies our size. The reasons that we pretty much lose officers is one is the pay issue. Another one is advancement. We're a small department. We don't have chances for, I think our last sergeant that we hired, we hired that individual because the prior sergeant to that won the lottery. Well, that doesn't happen every day. But we have a sergeant and a lieutenant, and that's and a chief. And as long as we all stay in place, there's not much room for advancement at this point. Officers go to larger agencies because there's more chance for that occurring. The other reason that they like to leave is activity. I can't help them on that. Our community is kind of small. We don't. I don't plan on advertising for crooks to come to our community, so we can alleviate that. But another reason is that larger agencies have specialized units, and that's another thing officers are looking for. If they can't advance right off, they'd like to go through some of the specialized units that these larger agencies have, and that examples of that would be like K9, SWAT, a drug unit, auto theft units, special tactical units, motorcycles, bicycle patrols, and mounted patrols, and it keeps going on from there. We're just not, as we grow, those things will occur here, but they're not going to occur for some time, at least some of those. We are looking at a bicycle patrol at this particular time through a grant that we got, so that's another specialized unit. The other thing is that, as I said, the hiring is being done by grants and everything else throughout the state, and we are pooling and trying to attract individuals to our department just as others are. But that means the hiring, the pool of people that there are applicants to be able to draw from also goes down. Because we're smaller, it's difficult to compete with the higher paying salaries. And but again, we are facing the same problems that other city agencies our size are facing. Because our pay is not as attractive, we're not getting lateral officers back. We're hiring lateral officers. We're hiring individuals that either are reserve officers. We've been doing that with us, and we pretty much exhausted our pool. We've hired 2 out of that this year. So we're looking at academy graduates at this point, and those individuals usually end up staying about 2 to 3 years and then move on to larger agencies. We can become kind of like a training ground, but that's pretty much all the fate of most smaller departments. And I kind of listed out a few of the individuals that have worked here, and just a partial list. And you can see here that we've had 4 years with 1 officer, and 3, about 2 years to 3 years, about the average. We have one bright spot, is we had an officer that left to go to Ceres Police Department, and then decided to come back to us, and was well received. But as you can see here, the average is about 2.5 years. The pay issue that we're looking at here, as I said, the hiring pool that we're looking at is getting smaller because we're facing what other agencies in Stanislaus County are having to face. But we're also competing with the Sheriff's Department, who's also pays higher, but also is incorporated cities of Patterson, Waterford, and Riverbank. And we are now vying with Modesto, Oakdale, Ceres, Turlock, and Houston that are the other agencies that are hiring within the county. Houston does pay less than us, considerably less, and as they have a less tax base to pull from. Newman, as you can tell, is well above that. And then one of the agencies that would be the next one that we've just lost an officer to about 6 months ago, was Oakdale. And if you can look there, that we're only about $200, a little less than $200 from their starting salary, but we were also from their top salary about $550, and that's kind of the gap. I think the bottom step, I think if you're going to make a move for $200, or less than $200, that's not much of an increase. But if you're looking at a $550 increase, that would be a considerable sum. I'm not saying that we cannot pay the salaries of Modesto or the Sheriff's Office, and even Turlock at this point, but we may be able to get down towards Oakdale, which would be the one less individual that we'd be competing with, and I think that should be part of our goal. We've also lost some officers to discipline, illness, and some officers that just didn't make it through our FTO program. In fact, last month we had a hiring process, and we rejected our number 1 candidate due to some background issues, and we re-interviewed our 2nd and our 3rd candidates, and have now made a conditional offer of employment to this individual. Happens to be a reserve officer, and we're looking at putting him on board on the 16th of this month. We will be back up to full staff at that point. The reason that we were doing this hiring is we lost Officer Corey Brown as of the 24th of last month. So basically we were not down that much. And I am anticipating hiring more reserves in this next coming year. Reserve programs are a very good program. It's been a very good program for us because basically we have a couple of things. One is we get to find out what those officers are all about. We find out what their work ethic is and how they're going to work out and how they're going to fit into our organization. That's one of the reasons why we've been so successful in keeping our department well staffed. But we have exhausted how many people that have completed the police academy at this point, and so we'll have to hire more reserves and have that behind them. I cannot afford, or the city cannot afford to put somebody through the basic academy. It's just not, it's too costly at this point for us to be able to afford that. Some of the other things that we've done to try to make ourselves a more attractive employer is we have incentive pays, educational reimbursement, and we've changed our work schedule this last year to accommodate going back from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. It means they work 4 11-hour shifts and have 4 days off. We also have special assignments in Detective Dare and Sonar Bike Patrol. So we are trying to get some special assignments going on. We're limited advancement opportunities at this point, but we're trying to increase the specialized units, and as the city grows, so will the chance for advancement and also the opportunities for these specialized units. although we are average in pay for cities our size, we need to look at closing the gap in pay with the other agencies in Stanislaus County. They are the competition that we are vying against. That's the pool that we're going after. We expanded our pool in the last hiring and advertised and got some candidates from the Fresno area. We also went to some job fairs and sent out flyers to all the police academies in California in an attempt to get other candidates here. With that, I will answer any kind of questions you may have regarding this report.
Are there any questions for the chief?
I have a couple. Mike, if I read you right, and I'm sure I do,
Yeah.
retention of offers would considerably improve if that top step was increased. Is that a true
Well, I'm
statement?
saying that would make us a more attractive employer. One of the reasons that officers leave, and it seems to be one of the main reasons, is pay. It's not the only reason. There are other reasons. When we do an interview with officers, we find out why they are leaving department. Hopefully, we make positive changes to make a work environment that's more conducive to hanging on to and retaining officers.
And how many steps are there in between the starting and the top step?
There are 5 steps right now.
Yeah, seems like we're bleeding as far as losing officers. We train them here, and of course that's, I guess, all small towns.
Smaller towns have that problem, but I believe that if we could take steps to try and alleviate some of those areas where we're weak, we would be a lot more attractive in retaining officers.
Mhm.
That's all I have.
Dave?
Mike, on this, the cost of your training here, how much, if any, of this is reimbursable by the state back to us?
Are you talking about on page 1?
Yeah.
We do not get any kind of reimbursement from the state for that type of training. We get the training that we get reimbursed for is the classes that we send them off to. We get about 75% of that cost back. I think you can see that cost would bring that down some, but it would not bring it down to a significant number.
Yeah, I sat in on your last interview last month, I think it was, and I see your point that there was not a real great class of individuals there. Some of them were good, and the others were just kind of bottom of the barrel. But is there, leaving out the salary increase, well, I don't mean leave it out, but outside of that, what could we possibly do to increase our chances of retaining people?
Well, like I said, some of the things that we do, we could add possibly more incentives. Currently, we have educational, bilingual, which not all officers would qualify for, but we can try and increase those. We have a DARE officer. We could do other incentives that would raise up some of the base pay. I'm not sure how many specialized units we could get into because we just don't have the
Right, yeah, I
resources to be able
understand
to do that.
I thought there was one specific thing or something. But,
Right. I think
How-
the work schedule was one of the things that really helped us at this point. I
yeah,
think
they all
it's,
seem to be happy about that.
yes.
How many officers are there that you would be looking at to increase this salary for?
How many would be eligible at this
Yeah,
point?
for this top step.
About 5? Yes. If they added an additional step.
Well, what I mean, if, say...
This step here that we're talking about on page...
Your top step is 2776, and say that we would increase that top step, how many officers would that apply to?
The one that there's this $555 gap with
Gap,
Oakdale.
right.
Oh,
Okay.
if I can, let me try to address that, Mike. What, you couldn't just, I wouldn't recommend anyway that you just raise the top step. What we would, because you're still gonna have somewhat of a problem there if you don't do something with the bottom step
Right.
too.
Correct.
So what you're gonna end up doing is moving the whole range up.
We just want to
a
get an
certain
idea, though,
percentage.
how many officers are on the top step at this point?
I'm not sure.
Because we're
Well,
trying,
there's
I just want to get an
maybe
idea
2.
as far as longevity, because I know we've got, what, 12 officers right now?
We have 11 officers.
11 officers.
sworn. Hoping for that 12th.
Okay.
But we are,
But at this point, there's 3 that have already.
4? 3 that
Three.
are at top step
Okay.
currently.
And the other ones, as if you've pointed out here, have gone to other departments.
That's
Haven't-
correct. We had, you know, and we're not talking like Modesto either. We're talking Oakdale was one of the last ones
Right.
that, the Sheriff's Office was actually the last officer left for.
Mhm. Dave, did you have any other?
No, that was basically what I.
Okay. I had a question regarding, and I just wanted to go through a couple of these items in the
Sure.
front here on this front page.
Sure.
I know Councilmember Reed here had sat on the last hearing, and you had made reference to the fact that the number 1 candidate didn't quite make it. I had sat on the hearing, I think the one prior to that, or if, I'm not sure if there was the prior to that, and as well, the number 1 candidate didn't make it either.
Unfortunately,
So,
we did end up hiring an
Right.
individual.
I know
And,
that,
he
but
didn't make it through the process.
I bring that up because the point that bothers me here is, you know, I just look at these costs, and when we adopt our budget every year, we just, you know, we see what the total amount is, and, you know, and it's broken down, but you know, the 720, we have to do this each time for advertising.
Well, yeah, that's if we choose to go outside of Stanislaus County.
Right, right. Then we've got these postal mailings, which is a small amount. But
Mhm.
then we have the lieutenant and sergeant application screening every time. We're looking at another $600. We've got the physical agility test, which we're looking at another $500. We're looking at the oral board testing, which is another $700. We're looking at the background investigation, which, as I just cited on these 2 examples here, that's $800 each time. You know, we're looking at the fingerprinting, the medical, the psych exam, you know, the uniform allowance. That's, you know, that's pretty constant because whoever we hire will be involved in that. But, you know, going down a couple steps further, then we've got this 3 months of FTO time. That's $11,400 that, you know, every time we've got a trainee, that there's 2 officers on. There's an FTO trainee.
We are down an officer because we have 2 of them in that same unit, 1 in training and 1 training.
Right. And then we've got, you know, this additional range qualification costs, and we've got this $1,000 worth of these 2 training classes in the first 6 months, and we've got these classes at, you know, this per diem, another $1,200. And, you know, and I'm looking at the 2 that I specifically noted was the 1 officer that we hired in July of 1995 and left in April of 96. He was here 9 months, and that's an additional $10,000 worth of loss. Then I look on the next page, and we have another officer that was here from March of 1998 to October of 1999, a year and 7 months, and, you know, we have a sizable amount here, you know, including the overtime and the training and, you know, benefits and overtime and everything else, and we're looking at, you know, in excess of $78,000. I'm not sure how much of that is the educational and the training and the, you know, everything else, but, you know, and I'm looking through this, and I believe I could make the statement that since I've been on the city council for 8 years now, and I believe I could say with pretty good certainty that we've had 20 officers probably come and go. I believe that's probably the case. It may be a little less, but around that number. And, you know, I know that when we meet later on tonight in closed session, we're going to be taking up this issue, but, you know, I hope that, you know, that we keep these figures in mind because, you know, I certainly don't want to see us continue to have this revolving door policy and, you know, and we have all this training, we send the officers to these schools and, you know, they participate in these classes and everything else, and, you know, they start to get a little bit familiar with the community, and boom, down the road they are. And, you know, and the one department that I'm looking at particularly is Oakdale, and, you know, I don't think that we're so far off from Oakdale. You know, my hope is that when we address the issue, which we will tonight, is, you know, that we'll start to see more lateral transfers, that, you know, that possibly, you know, one of the things that I've heard, you know, throughout the county is, you know, the statement that's made that our officers are very well trained. You know, other departments like getting our officers because, you know, we send them to so much training. But, you know, if they're,
That's one of the things we also try to when we go out and do our hiring to make ourselves a little bit more attractive is when you get to the larger agencies, you do not get that training. You get whatever the state mandate is, which is 24 hours in every 2 years. But the maximum of that is about 80 hours a year, and we try and do pretty close to the max with each officer. And we feel that that's it's a benefit to us, and it's also a benefit to them. That way we're hoping we're getting a well-trained officer, and hopefully that they'll see that we're making quite an investment in them, and hopefully that they'll stay with us.
Hmm. You know, one other thing I'd like to mention as well is, and I know when I was on the hearing board that it was very informative for me. I had an opportunity to see the different candidates and the pool of candidates that we get. Councilmember Reed also was able to serve on that. And I would hope that we would possibly see to it that when the police department does have a hearing, the oral board, that possibly one of the council members could serve on that at various times. It's certainly beneficial. It was certainly beneficial to me. I know it was beneficial to Dave, and I think it would be beneficial for us to at least see what's going on here. That way we could, that way we can inform ourselves of that. So if is that something that the council would be interested in pursuing?
Yeah, we can talk to you about that in the future
Okay.
if it comes up.
Okay. Other than that, are there any questions on this? Any other questions on this on this report from the chief? No. Thank you very much. And as I said earlier, we will we'll be meeting later tonight to begin our discussions on this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9F, this is approval of warrant 18711 to PG&E.
I move for approval of warrant 18711 to PG&E.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0 with 2 absent. Item number 10, these are items from the city manager. Cleve.
I don't have anything this evening.
Items from the council. Councilmember Martina.
Nothing this evening.
Councilmember Reed.
Nothing to see.
And I have nothing this evening as well. And at this time, we will move into closed session. Item A is conference with labor negotiator, Government Code 54957.6. 12B is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, one case, Government Code 54956.9. We'll take